witnessed what's happened with the fair community of WBAI, and I have little quote marks around the word fair, that democracy is trammeled by charisma people, by people who don't have their minds clear and functioning and understanding. Some people say the United States is not a democracy, it's a republic form of government. And yet we never get down to things, and I have asked, and you were one of the people who said that in the Pacifica statement of mission, that they never mentioned freedom of speech in it, so therefore, you're nodding your head?
Yeah.
Therefore, Lou Hill, the originator of this great concept, that therefore my suggestion was like blown to the wind, when actually a major program could exist on freedom of speech.
Okay, all right.
And its meaning.
It's true that the mission of Pacifica is quite specific. The mission of Pacifica is intended to bring about lasting understanding among groups of people and to study ways to reduce conflict. And it is to provide a platform for artistic expression for people and for journalists who might not find those things elsewhere. It was not intended actually to just be, you know, a platform for anybody to discourse on, you know, whatever they happen to find in their navel that day, or, you know, whatever. So,
come on, Bajwa, please.
But it had a
cut it out, will you?
Distinct mission. It had a distinct mission that had to do with a political platform, essentially, and an artistic platform, which, to my mind, aren't really in conflict, or actually complementary, because you know, there's not, because that creative impulse that an artist brings to the table has a great deal to do with how we then change the political landscape. Thank you very much. Yes, how we change the political landscape, and the political freedom that we struggle for has a great deal to do with allowing artists, again, to unleash even more creativity to change the political landscape, because it's out of that kind of creative thinking that real change will come. So it isn't just for anybody to call up and say whatever crosses their mind.
Oh, cut it out, will you? How many people do that? That's not fair to characterize the public that way.
You had your 3 minutes.
Oh, God damn my 3 minutes.
The other thing I want to clarify, I think we're mostly pretty clear on the difference between elections and democracy. If we lived in a democracy, we wouldn't have one little WBAI. You know, if we lived in a democracy, we would have universal health care. If we lived in a democracy, we would not have a nuclear power plant sitting in our backyard saying, come and get me, right? None of these things would occur because the people would have a voice. So I'm not going to go in depth into these things, but and obviously elections are subject to a great deal of abuse. I don't think there's really enough time either on the air for people to get a good sense of what candidates are about, because some people can talk the talk, and only later on you find out what walk they're walking. And the same thing is true with regard to the mailings that people may make. You know, people may make mailings, and what they say may be, you know, what it is, and other people may be putting out propaganda. So it's rough, and those are the differences. And yes, someone else wishes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathy Davis, and I am the Public Affairs Director, and I'm a delegate on the LSB elected by the staff. And as it happens, that there are a lot of complications with the elections. I am not a party to the lawsuit and only found out about it after the fact. And I have to say, on a personal level, it was very frustrating, because this election is so strenuous. I was really anxious for it to be over. But the truth is that there were a lot of problems with these elections. There have been a lot of, I believe, exaggeration on both sides in terms of the various factions and what they propose and what they accuse each other of. There is an exaggeration there. And the the elections, I for one got 3 ballots. Okay, many of the staff got multiple ballots or no ballots. Many of the listeners got multiple ballots and no ballots. There was a process of replacement ballots. So if you didn't get your ballot, you called for a replacement. They sent out replacements, but there were no record of, as far as I know, there isn't an absolute record of who got replacement ballots. And then what they do is they disqualify, if they sent 2 and 3 ballots, they disqualify some of those pins, those numbers. But we don't know which of our ballots went in, which was disqualified. Then there was the problem of the extension of the elections. There was one date to finish it, but because so many people didn't have ballots or multiple ballots or all these questions, there was an extension for people to get them in or to come in and claim their ballot had they not gotten one. And in that interim, a lawsuit was filed. But I just want to make clear that there are some serious problems with this system. Whether or not this lawsuit addresses it or is an appropriate way to address it, the problems are very real. And I was on the committee for the, what is it called?
Waivers.
Waivers. I was on the waivers committee. And it is true, on the last day that waivers were eligible, we had a big batch of forms, and most of those forms were approved. And I think after the end of the qualification period, there may have been 1 or 2 ballots, and those were also addressed. So I don't really understand what the question is that Baja was talking about in terms of additional ones. So I would imagine that anything that came after that deadline, it's appropriate for them to be disqualified. Anything that came before, it's appropriate for those to be qualified. So I don't know what the status of that is. And the way it works, the waiver doesn't have any real qualifications. It may be that you're sick, it may be that you're homebound, it may be that you're a caretaker, but they don't actually ask for those qualifications. You really just have to say, I can't do it, and sign and attest to that. So people get waivers. They don't have to, fight and prove whether or not they deserve it. If they request it, they get it. And that's the way it's been. So I just wanted to make that qualification. And as far as the controversy over the status of the board, that is a controversy and it's a problem for us all. And people feel differently about it and deal differently with it and have different positions. So, I mean, that's the nature of what it is that we're doing. We come to the table with our positions and we work them out. And to me, that is what democracy is about. Democracy is not about the silencing of people's concerns or people's situations or whatever it is that they want to bring to the table. Bring it to the table and then let's deal with it.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ray LaForest. I'm currently a member of the board. Been on the board for a long time. I'm kind of feeling the strain a bit. Anyway, there are many important issues facing us. And I'm hoping that we can use some of the time we have here to discuss them. As was said before, this is an open forum and any issue you bring is welcome. The program director is here and I'm sure he's willing to discuss issues, clarifications about how the station has been functioning and can function in the future and so on. Primarily though, this is being organized by the local station board. So I would hope to hear issues. Like I'm glad that Rosemary asked that question. Issues about, this is a very important institution that guarantees or tries to ensure that we survive in this very difficult age of neo-fascism. WBAI is very important to us. The local board is a very important facet of the functioning, the democratic, a very unusual institution that says that a radio station has a voice for the listeners to be part of it. Also something very interesting, that the governance, which helps pick a general manager, includes staff people who are themselves supervised by those managers. So it's a very interesting concept of democracy. And we have to keep it alive, explore alternatives to it, refine it, improve on it. So I'm hoping that we can question, for those who are new, anything as to what is the local board, to issues maybe as more complicated like what's happening with the election. And we hope that to all that, this is to motivate you to be part of the session, to contribute to its survival, to its growth, to invite other folks to do so. We as a tough decision, we cannot rely on the people in running for election now, and even in the Democratic or the Republican Party. Any of them who has gotten where he or she is has to rely on the interests that keep us enslaved and keep this society from developing, and want to monopolize, increase their power even further. So institutions like WBAI are absolutely vital to us. So I'll quickly touch on what was discussed, and to me, I have nothing against lawsuits, and we took the station back during that big fight in 2000. There were lawsuits involved, but to me, maybe more important than a lawsuit was the struggle of people to take to the streets to discuss issues and sit down together and reinvent the system, and that's what is important. Also, the courts, like the police, have too often been used by the system to oppress us, and it's still doing so. And it also discriminates access to people who have money to hire lawyers to decide how issues are resolved. So be very wary of that. So, but in terms of the specific, one of the problems I have with the lawsuit, in this case for the election, is not only to claim that something is wrong with the election. It's very clear. There are plenty of things wrong. Last year my daughter didn't get a ballot, but any reasonable person sitting across that spectrum and looking at what's going on would realize that something has to be done, but it's also as clear to everybody that everybody's being affected. So when one side decides to take a lawsuit and say that the reason we're in there is because the other side has somehow got hold of information and deviated people's email address and what they call snail mail these days, mail addresses, this is beyond the pale. There's absolutely no proof of that, and it is not addressing the real issues. And that is what is unacceptable. And so anyway, I'm going to stop now, and as I said, I'm hoping that we have a dialogue about the importance of the station, and I hope many of you can come to the local station board meeting to have your voice heard, to be part of the committees, and to help it be better and function better. Thank you.
This election process in WBAI, I hope it's not a mirror of the national election, but it has a whole lot of intrigues just like the national elections. They had a statement that the election supervisor made on air before the court proceedings about a group sending out mailing to people to send in stuff. I don't know if anybody associated with that is here. But this, I remember hearing this just before the issue came up with the court. Now, I was one who didn't get a ballot and was trying to call the number and stuff like that. But it was always the voicemail busy and you couldn't get through. That was a whole issue. And the issue of this election, to me, require a full meeting just dealing with that election issue and have all these people involved reporting to the listeners. Not what we have in here today. This is just a start. This is scratching the surface. We voted, we have all these people in the air giving their positions, why we should vote for them or not for the other persons. The intrigue that happened around this was something almost out of one of the CIA books. And it is something serious. It is something that listeners, sponsors should know in full. Too many things happen at WBAI and more or less escape the full understanding of the listeners. Too many things, and this is not the first, but we cannot allow this, the election, which is the most serious process in organizing the station and the board, to run into a problem like this without us listeners understanding. I don't have a clue fully what's going on. That is in the court, is now frozen on ice, and we don't know what the court will do. Well, we should have a say in it, regardless of where it is. It shouldn't be out of our hands as listener sponsors. We have to get involved. I'd like if we could get the board together and organize a meeting especially to deal with this. Before I go on any further, we have to, one person I consider a true dignitary in the house. We didn't introduce her before, but all WBAI people know the name Samori Maxman.
Yeah, absolutely.
A whole lot of the changes that take place at WBAI was due to his effort. And the groups that he had working with him, the groups he worked with. But today we're blessed at this meeting to have a person with us that, now I wouldn't say need no introduction, she does, because she may be a shy person too. But we have Mrs. Samori Maxman here with us. I want you to greet her properly. The efforts that we put a Samori into WBAI is, as they say, embedded in the stone. We don't want it in the stone though, we want it flowing like blood through the veins of WBAI. So, ma'am, if you could get some time to bring that energy back to us, we'll appreciate it. As far as the election go, I hope that a meeting could be set up to deal with the election because it is a very serious matter. To me, I feel that we were played, all of us were played in the airwaves, and what happened here is a good intervention by the ancestors to expose all of this. We have to deal with it fully and not just encourage or allow other people to sweep it under the carpet. Whether it's the carpet of the court or the radio station. We need to get under all of them, pull out all the dust, so that when BAI is moving forward, we're moving forward on a clean slate. We can't move forward with all this dirt hanging around. Ms. Nia Bidiako.
Hi everybody. I'm not going to speak. We don't want the board members to do all the talk. But I just have to clear up something that that Kathy said earlier. I was one of the 5 members on the waivers committee. The waivers are for people who can't afford to pay $25, but you can afford to donate your time. You can afford to donate your time, and here is a good reason, then you will do. August 31st. There was nothing, we didn't plan to go just do them because for the sake of doing them. It was organized that we would go to the post office on X date because we wanted to get a whole lot of the applications in so we wouldn't have to go repeatedly, and that's why we went, August 31st. The one, Wayne talked about full disclosure, so I think it's my responsibility since I was on the committee, Wayne, to fully disclose to you that one particular ballot. What happened, the ballots had to be postmarked August 31st. What? I mean, the waiver applications, I'm sorry, see, I'm thinking of ballots, okay, sorry. I got the ballot on my mind. The waiver applications had to be postmarked August 31st. So we went twice, so we could have a whole lot to approve, rather than going back and forth. There was one application that it was postmarked August 31st. But good old United States Postal Service, you can see it went from the Peck-Slip station in Manhattan to Brooklyn, back to the Peck-Slip station in Manhattan. By the time it got back to the Peck-Slip station in Manhattan by WBAI, it was after the date, but it was still postmarked. Postmarked is the key thing to remember. It's not when you dropped it in. So we couldn't, you talk about fairness and a democratic process. The only fair thing to do, he or she mailed this application. So we got it, and we decided, we all met, and we decided that we would approve this application. And that's what we did because the person met the qualifications. So there was nothing that was done that should not have been done. We thought we did the honest and fair thing. I also have a question. We talk about applications, and I'm glad Wade mentioned, to be open and fair. How many people got an offer with a flashlight or something? Everybody see that? Yeah. Okay. How many, did people mail their ballots back in those envelopes? No. Well, there are listeners who told me that they did, because it was a little confusing. So there was, and this gentleman is shaking his head. I won't point him out. I'll just keep my index finger to myself. So he probably got a little bit confused. Even my mom got a little bit confused. So I had to let her know. So there are also things going on with the election. There are the national election supervisors who, you know, there were violations that were made that he should have addressed, that weren't addressed. So those things helped to delay. This was said in the court. I was in court when we went, so there's nothing secret here. The judge very clearly said it. So those things, the ballots were mailed out late because of some of the same folks and their allies who filed a lawsuit. That was their reason for holding up the ballots for 8 days. And that is the truth and nothing else but the absolute truth.
How could they do it, though? How could they hold up things for 8 days? How come the accounting books weren't open for 3/4 of a year? Patty Heffley complained vigorously.
I'm not here up there 1 minute. They'll come up in 1 minute. Right now, I want to hear from Mr.
I mean, I'm asking questions. I'm not saying I know the answers even.
No, we all want to know the answers, please. Mr. Leonard.
Sorry, just two last points on the election, and I know you have other issues to bring up. On the last point that Neil was discussing about the waiver situation, I want everyone to be really clear what the lawsuit is saying, because I think it's outrageous. They are saying that a board that voted in a public meeting that anyone could apply through August 31st and have their application postmarked, that because now, 3 months later, the applications were not processed and decided by August 31st, which of course is an impossibility, right? If the rules allowed you to send it in as late as the 31st, how could you have known that you had to have sent it by the 25th or whatever so that the committee could meet on the 31st, say yes or no, and then vote, you know, yes, that person deserves a ballot. So now they're after the fact coming and saying, no. Anything that the committee voted after the 31st was too late and they should all be disqualified. So that's basically saying poor people, people with disabilities, they have no right to vote.
That's right.
That's point one. Point two is a couple people mentioned the status of the board right now. And one board member said to you there's differences of opinion. I don't think this is a simple case of differences of opinion. Pacifica has rules. Okay, we have a structure. We have a legal counsel who at the moment is also the interim executive director. His name is Dan Siegel. He studied the question that the people who brought the lawsuit have raised, which is, well, the board is 24 people, half elected in 1 year and half elected the other year. So the plaintiffs are saying, well, all of you who were elected in 2004 and therefore were running for re-election if they chose to in 2007, your terms are up. You're off the board. The only legal people sitting on the board today are the people who were elected in 2006. So that's 12 people, and it just so happens that their allies have a majority of that group. Well, the legal counsel looked into this. He looked at the Pacifica bylaws, he looked at Robert's Rules of Order, which we're required to follow, and said, no, that logic is completely wrong. It's very clearly stated that when there's any reason that the next generation of board members have not been qualified, that the election is not finished, or whatever reason, that the current people continue sitting until it's settled. And then, of course, the newly elected people will come in. Well, this group, not content to simply challenge the board chair who said, I think we should follow what Pacifica's counsel advises us, and demand a vote, which they lost, to overturn that ruling. Then they went and announced at the end of the last meeting, oh, we're having a meeting of the real board right after this meeting at a coffee shop a block away. And then they purported to pass motions at this so-called board meeting.
You were there, though. You didn't. It's not purported.
That's right. I was there.
So tell the people that you attended as a witness.
3 of us who totally rejected this sham were there to make sure that
What?
we were aware of exactly what kind of games were being played. And yes, we did go there and made it clear we were not participating in any way, shape, or form.
That's right.
And this group then purported to say, oh, well, we're going to set our own elections to the Pacifica National Board, and we're going to pass a motion saying that the process, which is completed, of having a committee to recommend candidates for general manager, a permanent general manager, that we have badly needed at this station for a long time, should be frozen until the new board is seated. God knows when that'll be, whenever the judge rules. They had no authority to pass that motion or any other motion, and now they've said they're having another meeting after our next legitimate meeting.
On Monday.
This coming Monday night at 7 p.m., which you're all invited to at the 1199 Union. So just be aware of what's going on here. This is an effort to illegitimately try to take power in a way that is absolutely against all of the rules.
Cool.
It's not illegitimate, it's people in action, that's all.
Okay, we open the questions. Anyone? Sorry, Ms. Cathy Davis, would you like to say anything at this point? Well, no, about the election issue, or just we could roll on. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. No better time than now.
Yes.
Right, brother. How y'all doing? Good afternoon. I'm a new member. My name is Ebony King. I'm sure I'm younger than all y'all, but I am grown. Now, you remember, I'm sorry. Well, you remember September when we were at the Adam Clayton building? I don't want to say too much about it, but this is a reminder of when we had the LSB meeting, and it was in regard to the elections that night. It was very hectic during the middle point when I entered, and I realized that if we don't learn to clean up our own backyard, for whatever level we are in general, especially those who may pursue whatever lawsuit issues are going on, I hope it works out on whoever is the right party. But we have to have a radio station like this so that young adults like myself can tell my peers, whether it's at college or in family life or social life, that we do have a real radio station here in New York City or wherever it is, where people of all backgrounds can call in and say what they cannot normally say because of the regulations of the FCC, who pays for the mainstream networks. Now, with that being said, I grew up listening to WBAI because my mom was listening to these type of radio stations. And she's around most of your peers, your aces, whatever. But I'm representing the future young adults of WBAI, or the generation to come, who may sit on the board one day. And I don't want any old torch passed down to me. So I just hope that we come together. This is a new year. This is a new year. And we need to reflect on how we can change everything from the inside out, little by little, in general. Not pointing fingers, just saying coming together. And one way is by respecting, other people's views. Like the way someone here was yelling out each time different people came up to speak. It's very inappropriate. If we are a family, then we have to learn how to get along with our family in Pacifica Radio or wherever we go. So just the karma that we give out. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Keep on the right time. Anybody else who hasn't spoken so far? Just now. We're going to be hearing from Cathy Davis. But before, I want to hear some of the listeners, the other people in the audience, especially those who haven't raised their hand, said anything so far. And we have one of our elders, female elders, to give us some words of wisdom. All right. We come back. Now we have Ms. Cathy Davis.
Thank you. I just wanted to address, someone mentioned something about a coup, and I've seen I've seen a couple of emails that are suggesting that there is some kind of coup underway. I don't happen to believe that to be the truth. I think that there are very strong competitive forces, and I think that there are very different opinions on how to deal with things. And these things have to be worked out according to the bylaws, according to the courts. But I haven't seen any evidence of a coup. I've been on the LSB for a year. I happen to be an independent candidate, and I've seen the fact that I don't have to align myself with the Justice and Unity Caucus. I've seen my perspective be suppressed, and I've seen myself being shoved into a corner with people whom I don't necessarily identify with, and not been able to come forth with my thoughts might be, with what I know from the experience of the station might be. And I feel that there needs to be some temperance and really listen to people, listen to everyone here, listen to the people here who are conspicuously absent. I don't know why that is, but you know, everyone has a perspective, and I think that it all has to be listened to. And I think we have to stop lumping people into categories and making accusations about this group and that group, and try to work this out for real, because the radio station is too important to play these kind of projected games in order to maintain and sustain whatever that power base might be. Because the radio station is in deep financial stress right now. It's under a lot of duress right now. And there are a lot of things, there are a lot of discussions that need to be made that, you know, I'm sure Bernard wants to talk about programming. You know, there's a lot of issues that we need to discuss in terms of fundraising and how to do that, and our premiums working and our premiums being sent out. So we have a lot to work on. And it's crazy to sit and accuse other people of, you know, to pretend that there's going to be a coup, when in reality, we have to just deal with these issues like grown-ups and stop playing games. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more comments on the election before I'd like to move on for this issue? Thank you very much. Any more? Okay. Now the issue on the election, we see how deep it is and how much more we need to know about the election. As I say, this is the major, the primary process of the radio station as a democratic institution. Now, it has some contradictions there that we had to be aware of. WBAI, Pacifica Broadcasting, is about the most people-oriented organization in the country. The strange thing about this is that Pacifica, WBAI, guided by a set of rules called Robert rules. Robert, from and I hope the information was correct, an English elitist parliamentarian that made up rules to keep the system elitist and for the people in power. This is what guided so-called democratic progressive organization. No, seriously, we had to get rid of Robert rules. Common sense must rule in every business that we're dealing with. Not Robert, not the whole elitists. When people have to be determining this, half of the meeting spent arguing over this nonsense called Robert rules. Please come out to the meeting. Don't be bogged down. It have a lot of things happening in our community that ancient practices, whether it's religious or what, keeping us bogged down. And as much as we see we don't have a way out, we tend to cuddle up like the ostrich, stick your head in the ground and say this is what we know. Well, this is what we know, and we know it's not working, so it's time to try something new. Part of the thing that was raised in the election issue was the finances of the AI. Glad that Kathy Davis mentioned it. We have here the financial, the treasurer. Yes, Mr. Bidiako.
He went to get more chairs.
Oh, he went to get more chairs. Okay.
Working treasurer.
Oh, yeah, he comes, right?
Go on up and talk.
Oh, that's somebody else getting the chair.
Now, I was asking for some more chairs, but he wanted to know how many, because the capacity is 100, but we're not at 100, right? We're not at 100. Okay.
Yes, the finances of WBAI. Like in any organization, this issue always have a lot of concern and a lot of heat. Naturally, so people want to know what is happening to the money. I mean, hey, every time you contribute, you should know. We just heard on the radio the card calling or apologizing for the delay in the distribution of premiums. Again, we thank them for the notice, but this is an area that we must look into. It's an area that keeps repeating itself too many times on fundraisers. But again, as far as the finances go, again, we have our treasurer here, Mr. Bidiako. Let him give us an outline of what is happening in that area. Mr. Bidiako, thanks.
Thank you.
Baruti, you can call me Baruti. Just one quick, they just gave me a little reminder, not a heavy hint, but that we have to be finished by 5 o'clock. But they just wanted to remind us that there's another group using the room afterwards. So I just wanted to put that out there. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all, or afternoon, I should say. Thank you all for coming out. Just going to give a brief overview and kind of open it up to questions, but just to give a brief overview on WBAI's budget and the process and how it works. WBAI, like all organizations that are well-run, has to put together a budget every year. The organization's fiscal year runs from October 1st and ends on September 30th. We have approximately 4 months into our fiscal year, and it's been a very challenging year financially. As a matter of fact, we don't have our final budget approved yet because of the challenges that we're facing. I'm sure you hear a lot about revenue being sort of flat, not sort of, but revenue being flat, meaning it's not increasing, but expenses are constantly going up and up. One of the major challenges that we face is rent. Rent for our tower, that's how we communicate. Rent for our office space, we're located on 120 Wall Street. And rent for, there's a third rent piece to that. And the transmitter, rent for our transmitter. So those are the major costs that we have. And our costs far and away exceed the cost of any other station in the Pacifica network. So although other stations have costs, many stations, not many, but some stations own their buildings. Some of them don't have to pay transmitter rent. So our expenses are, I think, it's estimated at least 6 times higher, 5 to 6 times higher than the next station in the Pacifica network. So we face a very, every year we face a challenge, but this year has been especially hard. One of the ways that the challenge was attempted to be met was to adjust staff salaries. There were 2 parts to staff salaries that were affected this year, or at least proposed to be affected. One was the increase that was supposed to take place on October 1st. That part was impacted by deferring the increase that took place October 1st. And in addition, there was an attempt, but we had to consider reducing salaries across 5% on an overall basis. So it's not something that we wanted to do, but unfortunately, salary was one of the few places where we could achieve some savings and hopefully put together a balanced budget. Some of the other areas, as I indicated before, one of the issues is listener support. Many times people make pledges, they don't fulfill their pledges. I'm sure their hearts are in the right place, but we need people to do better at fulfilling their pledges. Right now we're running about 80% fulfillment, which means that for every $100 pledge, we only actually receive about $80. So we need to increase that. If we could get up into the 90%, that would definitely solve our budget crisis. But we like people to pledge, but we want you to pledge something that you can actually fulfill. So that's always an issue. Another issue is that many times we lose pledges. I'm sure there'll be a call put out for volunteers at some point during the day. Many times, especially during the morning hours when there are a lot of calls coming into the station pledges, if we don't have enough volunteers there to answer those calls, then that's money that we lose. So I'll put a word in, I'm sure it'll be echoed by other speakers if it hasn't already been, that we need volunteers to come to the station, especially during that 7 to, let's say, 10, 11 o'clock hour, when we have Wake Up Call and Democracy Now!, which is, some of our peak times of fundraising during the year. Let me see if there's anything else I want to highlight. But money, yeah, of course, money related. Oh, another challenge we face is a reduction in our CPB funding. All of the stations. Look, let me explain what the CPB is. Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and what that is, that's a government entity that provides funding to institutions like WNET, other nonprofit entities that are involved in broadcasting, television, radio. We received a cut, and the other stations in Pacifica received cut in funding from CPB. So that's something that we can't really control at this point, but it just makes our budget situation even more challenging. So we've got to make up those funds through other sources. what we're looking at, how do we solve these problems? Well, right now there's a working group that's been put together by folks at our national office in California and working with people locally to put together a plan to help address this issue. One of the issues we're looking at is trying to find another location, a location that's going to be less expensive for us to operate out of. And if we can do that, that can save us a lot of money. The other thing is just looking at the overall operations of the station and see if we are operating as efficiently and as effectively as we should. So we do have some financial challenges, but we're trying to meet the challenges by working with our national and local people and coming up with solutions to our income and expense situation. And I'll leave it there, and I'll open up the floor for questions. Go ahead.
You're saying you're looking for other locations for the station. Are you doing the outer boroughs, or you're just Manhattan only? Because that seems to be, everybody seems to be prone to stick in Manhattan. You know, a lot of times we live in East New York and people don't even know what BAI exists. We got, you know, so we would, you know, we want to kind of get into the mix with y'all because everybody seems to be Manhattan orientated, and the rest of us in the borough don't mean nothing.
Right. I'm not on the committee. I'm not sure where the committee is in process, but I would have to say that they're definitely going to have to consider a place other than Manhattan, because Manhattan rents, you know, the opportunity to get cheap rent or cheap property in Manhattan is long gone. Even they missed the Harlem wave, as it were. So. And those days are over. So I would think that ultimately we're going to be in one of the outer four boroughs.
What about your lease? How long is the lease for? Your lease going to block you from moving, right?
That is one of the major hurdles. Even if we find another location, is it going to make sense to? Because whatever, you can break a lease, but it's going to cost. Yeah. But the question is the cost offset by the potential savings that we would have with getting a new place? But we do have a lease. I think it's 2012. 2012, our lease goes to, so we have approximately 4 more years on our current lease. Question in the back, yes.
I think it's very important to find another place for BAI, either, or maybe just an off-site place for people to come and volunteer. I think you would have a whole lot more volunteers if people didn't have to call up and register.
I think, and you made me think of something, because with the technology today, we could have satellite places around the city where people could be answering phones that come into the station. I mean, we would have to modify our phone system, but there's technology out there, because I work with it firsthand. There's technology out there where you don't really know where people are that are answering a phone. They could be in their home, you know, if you wanted to take. Yeah, they could be, you know, you don't know. Right. So you call one number, but you really don't know where that number is ringing. So I think you make a good point that at some way we need to leverage the technology to take advantage of people who might want to volunteer, but obviously they can't, it'd be difficult for them to get from, let's say, East New York to the station by 7 in the morning. But they could probably get, you know, 15 minutes away by 7 in the morning, and those would be calls that we could capture. So you make a good point. We do need a way to have, I guess, satellite locations, for lack of a better word, in order to leverage the volunteers that are out there. Wow.
I just wanted to add on the question of the lease running to 2012, that there are other options to get around that. We're not stuck with having to pay out the rent for the next 4 years. You know, that Wall Street location is a desirable one, and we've talked to some real estate experts. There's ways to recruit, substitute, basically subtenants who would pay the rent and so on. So I wouldn't assume that will be the barrier to our moving. I think we can definitely, you know, especially, and this is just a call that I think I'm on the finance committee, and we would like to have people help us in this quest we're going to be on in 2008 to begin the process of searching for a new place and launching a capital campaign to raise the money to purchase. So we're no longer in the renter's mind. And there's a lot of talented people in the listenership who know about real estate and know about locations and know about how to raise large sums of money. So we really welcome any help anyone can give us in that effort.
Questions on finances? Question? No. Okay, well, question, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's just a suggestion. It seems like in the listenership, you have one part of the listenership. I mean, the station gives out such intense information, but the thing is that you have one part of the listenership that is totally internet savvy and goes to 300, 400 websites and, you know, pretty much uses BAI as a search engine, which is incredible. But the thing is, my feeling is that you have another part of the listenership that really is listening to BAI in real time, you know, which really, to me now, with the stuff that BAI gives out, and you have the archive that's like a 90-day archive, if there, one way to generate income, well, it's actually two ways. One way is that if you had some kind of charge with a fee, donation to the station, where you can teach listeners who are listening in real time now to be able to know how to get onto the internet, how to burn the CDs, how to access the archive, how to get to this stuff, to get this information, because you have so much incredible information that disappears in 90 days. If the whole listenership who doesn't have the technical savvy to get to that information was able to get to that information, and plus you have people at the station who have great researchers, great technical people, I mean, if that was offered as a service where listeners can pay to learn how to do it, you can raise money in a short term, I think, because there's so many cab drivers, so many people in their kitchens who do listen to the station, but it's like it's gone, you know, and it's not really, you could, if you put out a course is something that in charge as a donation, like, you know, whatever, $200, $300 as a donation to learn those skills, as you know, to raise money. Secondly, I know this is not very socialistic or, you know, very left, but if you charge to get on the archive, like Coast to Coast does. Coast to Coast, which is a commercial, some of you know about Coast to Coast, they have a huge archive too. And they charge a small fee, monthly fee, to get on the archive. And I understand that raises them a whole lot of money. Because if you have this great archive and you have a small, or maybe it's not a small group of people, or maybe it's even people who are not contributing to the station, maybe not living in the region, but are still accessing this archive with this incredible information and paying nothing into it. You know, if there was, that's another way to raise money. I mean, Coast to Coast does raise a lot of money with their archive. So just two suggestions.
Right. Well, I do know that the people that do the computer show, they do offer tech support. So that might be a natural linkage to, you know, something, because maybe we could have them formalize into it, like you're saying. That's a good suggestion. Like a specific class in which just showing people how to download stuff off the archive and save information.
How to burn stuff.
Right, how to burn stuff. Because like you said, it's a skill that probably a lot of people that do it, we probably take it for granted, but people that don't have the skill, you know, it probably would be something that they might want to, even if they just invested $50 in, you know, might be able to
more than that?
Yeah, to do that. So I think that's a good point. And then the second issue is I had suggested, but there's always countering arguments. My position is that if iTunes can charge 99 cents for a download, you know, why can't we? Because I think we have information that's just as valuable. Now, there's people on the other side that say that the model is going in the other direction, where you just give, you know, you give content away, and I don't know how you benefit from that. But they're saying that you know, the charging for content model is disappearing. I don't know. I don't follow these trends that closely, but it seems to me that somehow we could either if you're a member, you can get, you know, you get X number of downloads for free. And if you're not a member, there's a way that you can get the old, you know, the 91 day and older downloads. You pay 50 cents or whatever for a download. It would seem to me that there's some kind of way, I agree with you, that we could capitalize on that particular resource and make money, because we need to make money with as little labor input as possible. So and downloading off the web to me is a low labor. You know, once it's set up, it should basically run itself. So I agree that those are good ideas that we need to follow up in. Did you want?
I'd like to say something. I think it belongs here, this subject, but it's not exactly.
Go to the mic,
I
please.
do not have a computer, okay? Okay, I am a sculptor. I cannot afford to buy a $1,000 computer, okay? There are many people, but not only a computer, a laptop, I cannot have, I am living in such a small room that I cannot have a big computer in my room, okay? I have a sculpture studio, I cannot take it there, doesn't matter, I don't want to get into the detail. But there are many people like me who still don't have a computer because financially I cannot afford to buy something for $1,000 and then every month you have to pay something. And I'm sure that there are many other people who don't have a computer, not because we don't want to, because we cannot afford it. And what I would like to say, that it is constantly forgotten. When there are announcements in the radio, WBAI, I listen to it 10 hours every day. And every time when they announce something, they always say the internet, everything, addresses, and they do forget to say the phone number. I mean, what about those lots of people, old people or young people who are just poor and they cannot afford it? So please give us the phone numbers and don't forget us. Okay?
That's a good point, and sometimes we do need to be reminded of that every now and then, because sometimes, you know, those that are into computers, they forget the people that aren't there.
You heard that.
Kathy, it's late behind you, then you're next.
Right.
Hello, I'm Rita, and you said that I was shy. I am not shy.
Thank you.
I just want to say last week I called BI. I tried to get through to Bernard, and each time I called, the phone rang, I think 15 times. Nobody answered. I called again, 14, 15 times. Nobody answered. And then I understand there was a volunteer or a Tim, and she wouldn't even say WBI. She said WB something. Anyway, that's not why I'm standing up here.
What did she say?
She said WB something. I don't know. It wasn't WB. I think she was trying to, get it together. But I'm just here to say, Ebony said something earlier, and while Samori was at WBI, my problem with him was, where are the young people? And even with his children, he wouldn't take, I have two daughters, one is 28, 22, and my son is 16. And he wouldn't take the girls. No, it's not the place for them. It's not the place for them. And right here today, the youngest person here is my son, who's 16. And sometimes I wonder why, when we have these programs, children are not growing.
Young people, right.
Young people, not children, young people.
Everybody.
So I'm trying to get Kaifa involved. Not that I want Kaifa to follow Samori, because I didn't want Samori at BI. But Samori dedicated, his whole life was BI. BI came before his family, and we suffer, we struggle, we suffer. And so I want my son to be aware, but he can do something else and then do something on the side of BI. So Bernard, I just want to thank him. Bernard has sort of taken my son under his wings. And Kaifa has visited the station several times. He's been around, and I'm trying to get him to listen to positive programs. Our children listen to rap music, they listen to certain talk shows that talk about how many times you get it on with a girl, things like that, nothing positive. Even at our local barber shop, when I take Kaifa, the things I hear, I'm like, I don't believe it. Our kids are, paying attention, wrap attention in those negative things. Your mama, the more you insult the other person's mom, you win the prize. So I got a copy of Dr. Leary's tape, and I took it to my barber, and I met him yesterday in Target, and he said, thank you for, this statement, but he's gonna burn it, so. To make copies for other people. And so I'm trying to get my son to listen. I think WBAI needs to have a program where you know, Ebony can go in her neighborhood, or my son can tell another 16 or 17-year-old, you know, at 2 o'clock on Saturday, there's this program where you can call in and say what you have to say, or things that are bothering you, or things that the young people need in the community. You know, it shouldn't all be about, you know, politics and adults, because these children do grow up, they become the adults, you know, and they need something else other than the rap music, the video this and the video that. I even go here from and turn the TV off at the grade and listen to the news, even half an hour. Listen to the weather report even, you know, you see, and we need to do that. And again, I just want to thank, this year is gonna be 9 years in March since Omori left us. And I just want to thank everybody, and there's some of you that recognize who were there for me and for us. And I just want to thank you all for crying with us, because by you crying with me made it easier for us to deal with. And it isn't easy, even after 9 years, it is still hard. And especially every when I look at my son, it's like I'm looking at some more. So I mean, he will always be there, and will always be part of BI, no matter what. I mean, I will always be connected with WBAI for the rest of my life because of Samori and my children. And I just want to thank you all, and I want to thank Serene, who encouraged me to come today. And you know, so I wish you all, you know, success in the programming, and we need WBAI. So long live WBAI.
Want to end the finance? Any more finance or?
Yes.
Oh. Wait, Monroe, and then gentleman back there. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy was first.
Can you explain why it took 3/4 of a year?
Wait a minute.
I just want to respond to the problem of giving websites on the air, because even as a broadcaster, I'm very frustrated. But I have found that many organizations have streamlined themselves to the internet and don't actually provide very often numbers to call. So we have to find some way to bridge that so that people can get the information who don't have internet. So I think we have to create some kind of bridge there, where maybe there's a volunteer at the station that can be accessible to get information for people who don't have internet access. And I think that's important to work on as well.
Then it was Monroe, and then John.
Can you explain why it took 3/4 of a year? Why I had to be subjected to it? Why Bob Lederer, you, everybody here, 3/4 of a year to open the books. Indra Harder was involved, and why does it take? Do I have to be? I feel like a fool, because I love the station. And everybody, my relatives hate it, and no, really. My superintendent comes up and he says, "How you doing with Rush Limbaugh? How you doing with I mean, and I said to him, because he hears my radio playing, he says, "How's Hannity doing?" I finally told him, "Look, I don't care. Don't fix my ceilings from the leak that just happened when they redid my roof." I said, I don't want to be near you, because instead of you saying, what do you hear on WBAI? There's an attitude in our society. The COINTELPRO people. Bernard White, I appealed to him. I've appealed to him. Don't say I don't know 4 of the names on the birthday list. And he says, I say, don't say that because you don't know them, Bernard, that we don't know them. It may be somewhat true, but this is the problem. It's been said here by others. The point is that there's something wrong in the thinking of the people here. Why do I cry out? Because somebody has to.
Okay. Thank you. Gentlemen.
Yeah, well, you didn't answer the question about the 9 months. You don't want it. You don't even know.
Listen, there's been a struggle at the local finance committee to get information. There has been from the business office there. Okay?
I know, but all they had to do was Xerox the pages that were referring to what they wanted to examine.
we're volunteers. We're not, we're no one's boss. So people can resist our requests. All right? So it's not like I can put a request.
I know, but this was the Pacifica Foundation that requested.
Yeah, I know, but we've had, there's been problems.
And what about Nicole Sawaya? She was hired and fired or resigned.
Okay, well, let me go to the next gentleman.
Let's go to the next person.
Thank you,
Let's go.
sir.
Come on.
May I have your question, sir?
My name is Charles Moore. I represent the gentleman WBAI since the 70s.